In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was World Series debating. God couldn't count. And God so laughed at the world that he gave his 5th misbegotten debate to Adelaide. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. Colonel William Light, who said, the reasons which led me to fix Adelaide where it is, I do not expect to be generally understood. And lo, they were not. And the motion was that God has no sense of humour. And God said, just wait till the end of the show. Unto laugh everlasting, amen. In fact, I don't think the words humour, laughter, or funny appear anywhere in the Bible, though Peter speaks of rejoicing in joy unspeakable. And if that's literally the case, we may as well abandon the debate before it begins. Peter also declared that the end of all things is at hand, which I suppose is mildly amusing, since 2,000 years have passed and all things, or at least most of them, are still pretty much in place. No, for a sign of heavenly hilarity, we must look not to God, but to man, as in this piece of graffiti. God is alive, he just doesn't want to get involved. Mel Brooks thought that God is like a Jewish waiter, he has too many tables. And more ethereally, Nietzsche asked, is man one of God's blunders, or is God one of man's blunders? How can we tell? Which one should we ask first? And could we believe his answer? Is it a he anyway? If it isn't a he, how can the feminists of this world be so damn sure it isn't? And what if, as the atheists maintain with such religious fervour, there isn't a God at all? Who'd be having the last laugh then? Perhaps it'd be Roger Waters, who wrote, there was an old man with a beard who said, I demand to be feared. Address me as God and love me, you sod. And man did just that which was weird. No weirder, I'm sure, than the prospect of hearing 6 ecclesiastical eccentrics. For the affirmative, the mostly irreverent Robyn Williams, St. Francis of Greenslade, and Cardinal Sinful Andrew Denton. And yes, you can clap if you like. You'll be laughing on the other side of your face shortly. And for the other side, Smother Superior, Wendy Harmer, Sister Smile, Rachel Berger, and His Disgrace, Richard, Bishop of Neville, Neverland. And God said, yea, verily, go for it. And just do it. Let us go and do likewise. Robyn Williams was born in Wales of Doctor Who and Monty Python. Began shaving with Occam's razor, suffered in biology at London University, was transported and buried in the ABC in 1972, and 3 years later was raised to the science show, whence he has come to judge the quick in the head. He's also produced 8 books, won a dozen awards, including the United Nations Peace Prize 5 times, and is chairman of the Commission for the Future, which is about as close to God as you can get, apart from the Prime Minister's waiting room. Is there a finer example of the scientific world made flesh? Yes, but you'd have to go a long way to find it. To open the case for the affirmative, that God has no sense of humour, Robyn Williams.
Imagine, it's 5 minutes before the Big Bang, and God is sitting there, bored shitless. God is bored shitless for 2 reasons. First, there's nothing whatsoever to do. He could, of course, contemplate his own mystery, but as he's omniscient, that wouldn't take very long. Secondly, gods don't have bowels. Not even Jewish ones. That, as we shall see, is the core of the problem. Now, I don't want any pedants, because Adelaide is full of pedants, complaining that there were no minutes before the Big Bang, and there wasn't a there for God to be sitting in. Frankly, God is omnipotent, and he can have minutes any time he likes, even metric ones, and he can create places to sit, even if there is no place in which to put them. That's what you do when you are omnipotent, isn't it, Andrew? Which makes it all the more significant that God did not create jokes. He did not do so because he chooses not to have a sense of humour. There is a clue to this. What do you think God looks like? God does not look like some of the greatest, funniest... God does not look... He's talking to me. God does not look like some of the funniest men of all time. God does not look like Groucho Marx or Charlie Chaplin or Billy Connolly or my friend Andrew Denton. Nor does God look like a tonsorially challenged Tinkerbell like the man behind me, Sir Campbell McComas. And why not? And why not? Because they all, Groucho Marx, Billy Connolly, they all look like the devil. Think about it. Laughter is the creation of Satan. Put a little moustache under the nose of Wendy, and what have you got? Why, Beelzebub. And what's Richard Neville got up his trousers? Why? It's a tail. What about those little horns that Rachel Berger has hiding under her blow wave? It's the devil who makes the jokes. It's God who's got the glums. God is a grump. Read the Old Testament, and there's not a giggle in sight. How else could God create things like Melbourne? I mean, really. How else unless he was completely humourless? Or Jeff Kennett, or the Sydney Swans? You have to be capable of the most profound melancholia to do that. So what does God look like? He looks like Burnham, or Julie Andrews. God is like Woody Allen after the court case. God is like Adelaide. Nice, oh yes. Funny, no way. A bit dull, like heaven. As I said, in the beginning, God was bored. So he decided to make heaven a little bit interesting by creating the universe. And that, you must agree, is a terrific way to fill in 6 or 7 days. He created Collinswood and Fitzroy and Sandy Bay and Subiaco and the National Debt and the Flinders Ranges and sheep. He made bed bugs and chicken pox and syphilis and iced vovos and snot. Well, he must have. And he made rap music and modern art and halitosis and hangovers. And he made Muzak and Channel 9 and taxation. And having done all that, he looked at it and said, "It is good." Not funny. It is good, but not funny. So where do the funny bits come from? They came from the devil. Why? Because humour is cruel. Take a typical joke, like the English cricket team, or the chances of Bronwyn Bishop becoming Prime Minister. Jokes are cruel. Or talking about God, did you hear that David Hill is taking self-esteem classes? He's actually trying to reduce his self-esteem to the same level as Paul Keating's, round about the ozone layer. But God is not a bitch. God can't be rude. I mean, can you imagine the Pope telling the one about the Englishman, the Irishman, the Scotsman, and the sheep? No, because he's Polish. Or could you imagine Jesus telling oy vey jokes at your next bar mitzvah? Or can you imagine the Archbishop of Sydney wearing a funny frock like John Cleese did in Monty Python? Well, yes, actually. Which is why he doesn't want to ordain women. But God, you see, is the ultimate out-of-body experience. He doesn't actually have a body or a face or a long beard. He just puts them on like a hologram for photo opportunities. Or maybe oil painting opportunities, if you like. God doesn't bother about bodies, except as temporary vessels in which to keep souls on earth. You're as likely to have a body in heaven as Hugh Morgan is likely to become the next lead singer of Yothu Yindi. Really. And then, of course, is the ultimate non-joke. No bodies. All the fun things of life are gone. No more boozing or eating lollygobble bliss bombs, or wanking or watching videos, or listening to Radio National, or smelling coffee, or having a massage, or sticking your finger where it's not supposed to be. No listening to Mozart. No ears. No noses for roses. No mouths for muesli. In heaven, there will be no taste buds to savour a good Chardonnay, or even a bad one. No skin to caress or hair to stroke. No dangly bits to be fondled in private mode. Would you put that instrument away, please, Tinkerbell? Please. And put your hands where God intended. In heaven, you won't have bills. In heaven, you won't have bells or dangly bits. Heaven! Can you imagine anything more dull? We shall just float on forever, contemplating our navels, which we haven't got. It'll all be as funny as flu. But when we get to heaven without our bodies, we too shall be godlike and po-faced, without humour. Some of us, on the other hand, will keep all this terrific bodily equipment and go laughing to the devil to tell one-liners in hell. So you see, God not only lacks a sense of humour, he also needs a corporate plan. Thank you.
As for calling me Tinkerbell, it's all very fine coming from someone from Sydney. You have heard the official scientific explanation. Now for the second lesson. And God made woman out of man, and Wendy made mincemeat out of God. But she still believes that she has a sense of humour. And what does she think? Ask her. To open the case for the negative, Wendy Harmer.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about here this afternoon, as much as anything, is an attitude to life. I put to you just before we go along that my team is walking in the rain, Andrew's team are getting wet. To begin with, whether you think that God created mankind in her own image, or whether you think that man invented God to keep us company through the great, lonely, cosmic night, you must hold that man and God are born of each other. Thus, if man, the knowable, does have a sense of humour, then God, the unknowable, must, ergo, have one too. One small demonstration of God's sense of humour is that Robyn Williams, a scientist, has been given the opportunity to contemplate the nature of God. Robyn even thinks he knows what God looks like. I'm reminded of there's an old Hindu fable here I'd like to share with you. It's called The 6 Blind Men and the Elephant. Now, in this fable, 6 blind men go out to try and describe what an elephant looks like. One grabs the tail, comes back and says the elephant is very like a rope. The other feels the knee and says the elephant is very like a tree. The other feels the trunk and says the elephant is very like a snake. Each one of them is absolutely convinced they know what the elephant looks like. But they don't. Only the elephant understands its true nature. Whether the elephant sat on the six-blind men in the end is not recorded, however. Scientists describing God, give me a break, scientists haven't even figured out why toast always falls butter side down. And since when have scientists been known for their senses of humour? A bunch of social misfits who like to stock up on cans of Sprite and wagon wheels. And spend Saturday night swapping back issues of Omni magazine. Besides, what can you believe from a bunch of people who wear socks with open-toed sandals? I'm sorry, Robyn. I'm sorry, Robyn. It's true. God likes a laugh. She began with the greatest riddle in the universe, the riddle of creation, and she'll end it with her most memorable punchline ever, eternity. And the human race is the best joke of all, even if we don't get it. Let me give you an example. God gives us 5 senses to be going on with, okay? We're given the sense of smell, so God invents the fart. We're given a sense of touch, then we get crimpline. We get a sense of hearing, and hey presto, Billy Ray Cyrus. And then we're given sight and taste, and we come up with clear cola. And then on top of all this, just to drive us along, God gives us a sex urge. That's why we're here, primarily to procreate. Sex is what we're about, and orgasm is given us to make us happy while we do it. But what a marvellous sense of humour to just put just a millimetre in between a fabulous orgasm and being tickled. And if we do achieve this orgasm, which is the most fun we can have before we laugh out loud, whose name do we call out? Oh, God! Oh, God! And the great irony of all this is the climaxes last only 15 seconds. We can't remember them. We have to do them all over again. Let's face it, a sense of humour is the only thing which makes the human condition bearable. Tonight you're bound to hear a litany of woe from the team opposite. Religious wars, arbitrary plane crashes, cancers. And this is supposed to demonstrate that God is a terrible, vengeful being. You know, a macho sort of bloke who just beat out Arnie Schwarzenegger for the lead role in The Terminator. But if God is supposed to be represented in the AK-47 assault rifle, God is also in the whoopee cushion. Logically, God is in the rubber chicken as much as she is in the atom bomb. Certainly, God's choice of representatives here on Earth is one of her best running gags. Now, how many of you knew that the Mormons invented the first knock-knock joke? It goes like this. It goes like this. Knock, knock. Who's there? The Mormons. Piss off. And the best part is that the Mormons have to come back 355,000 times before they get it. Jim and Tammy Backer, God's brilliant stand-up comedy duo. After Jim's fall from grace in a seedy motel with a lady of the night, he stood up and said, "The devil made me do it." No, Jim, it was your dick. That was God's small way of saying, "Hey, guys, just kidding," you know. I'd like to think that my God, my significant other, would come with me to a comedy night. I like to think she was there at the Comoidia, the great Athenian religious festival from which comedy gets its name. In fact, the Romans did have a god of mirth. McComas. from whose Campbell's illustrious line is obviously descended. And in fact, in one guise or another, God has always been the subject of good-natured ribbing. As the actress said to the bishop, we say, not as the actress said to the atheist. It's two Jews who walk into a bar, not two agnostics. Kids have been at it for years. Who is the most elastic man in the Bible? Jacob, because he tied his ass to a tree and then walked to Jerusalem. Why did Jesus cross the road? Because he was nailed to the back of the chicken. Now, by rights, this vengeful, terrible God we've all been talking about tonight will strike me dead right now, okay? Phew. See what I mean, ladies and gentlemen? God has better things to do than orchestrating the misery of mankind. There are a few billion other life forms on this planet, and God only knows how many other planets to be looking at, to be thinking about, and to be taken care of. And quite frankly, she's too busy laughing at us to care. Thank you.
Hasn't it been truly said that if you cross an atheist with a Mormon, you get someone who knocks on your door for no reason at all? If God is a woman and the woman is Wendy and God really has a sense of humour, shouldn't Wendy be laughing at her own jokes? Not according to Francis Greenslade. Verily, this man is 12 disciples in one. He acts on the stage, on television, on film, on video, and out of sheer desperation. That's 5. He does stand-up, theatre sports, weddings, parties, anything. That's 10. And he sings, plays 6 instruments, and was best speaker at the World Universities Debating Championship in the year of our Lord, 1989. That's 18, which is not bad out of 12. In short, he's a miracle worker gone berserk. To continue the case for the affirmative, Francis Greenslade.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, I feel an indescribable pleasure, which consequently I won't bother to try and describe to you, being able to stand here and talk to you. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure that is tempered by a deep and abiding sense of sadness, disillusionment, and anger. Anger, ladies and gentlemen, that the high-quality debate, which began with Mr. Robyn Williams' excellent speech, has been dragged into the gutter by the brides of Christ over here. These three intellectual pygmies, and obviously, specifically, Ms. Wendy Harmer, the intellectual pygmiest of them all. Let's turn our attention to some of the points that she dumped in front of us like a resentful assistant nurse emptying bedpans into a large bin. Wendy was talking about religions other than the Judeo-Christian. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, all religions are unfunny, whether they be Christian or Buddhist. When the comedy act is finished at the Zen Hilton, what's the reception? The sound of one hand clapping. Must have been a hilarious night out there. And in Islam, you're lucky if you've got hands to clap at all. And let's stomp on the idea right away, ladies and gentlemen, that God is a woman. He's a man, he lives in South Australia, and he plays full forward for the Adelaide Crows. I want to leave the negative case now and return to the affirmative case, a very, very different kettle of loaves and fish indeed. Now, when you're trying to establish God's sense or absence of humour, the first thing we need to look at is the evidence. And the first thing there is God's latest bestseller. Well, really his only bestseller. He never really got over that second novel block, did he? The Holy Bible. If God is such a witty raconteur, then surely the Bible must be full of hilarious, side-splitting belly laughs. But the gags should proliferate like lifestyle programs, ladies and gentlemen. But the sad truth is that the Bible is about as funny as measles. It's about as funny as third-degree burns, ladies and gentlemen. It's about as funny as those amusing people that go to parties with condoms on their heads. That's how funny it is. But let's take a look. John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was. Nice beginning, building up nicely to a surprise punchline. And then what do we get? Do we get in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was cheeseburger? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was ferret? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was karaoke machine? All fairly funny words in their way. No, the rip snorter of a gag that God's written in is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. I mean, not even the writers of Hey Dad would have used that one. But the very sad thing is that the Bible has such potential for humour, ladies and gentlemen. All the essential elements of comedy are there. Men and women, heaven and hell, Jews. I mean, the Jewish race invented comedy. Look at Groucho Marx, Woody Allen, Rachel Berger. Doesn't the name sound like something you'd order with a Jumbo? I'll have the Rachel Berger and regular fries. But I digress. Lepers, the potential for tasteful leper jokes is huge. Where's Jesus? Where's Jesus running around the leper colony dipping his Jats biscuits into the inhabitants? Where's Jesus contracting leprosy, then at the Last Supper picking up one of his hands which has fallen off and saying, "Take, eat, this is my body"? Nowhere. Great opportunity for humour completely wasted. How much better the Bible would have been if it was written by proper writers of sitcoms. The Feast at Cana as Married with Children. Jesus turning the water into wine while Ted Bundy leans up against the wall, drunkenly urinating and shouting, "Hey, Jesus, watch me turn it back into water." Roseanne trying to pass through the eye of a needle. Even "Hey, hey, it's Sabbath day" would have been better than what we actually have in the Bible, an utterly unamusing collection of acts of violence, death and supernatural cures. More like hard copy meets The Extraordinary than any sitcom. And if God did have a sense of humour, then going to church would be a proverbial hoot. There'd be amusing little mottos on the communion wafers, like, "Priests do it on their knees." There'd be whoopee cushions on the pews and sermons that began, the lesson is taken from Matthew chapter 3, verse 16, so this guy Jesus goes into a bar with a duck on his head. And what have we got instead? We've got small children running through woods singing that profoundly moving song, "I've got 3 pockets in my overalls." We've got gun-toting, snake-handling, TV show-owning American fundamentalists from the Church of the Blessed Virgin Mary's bleeding nose dripping onto the face of Jesus. We've got Mormons on bicycles, not a giggle between them. And where's the humour, ladies and gentlemen? Thousands of millions of South Americans dying in poverty and disease because contraception is banned, and there's just too many of them, while some bloated pontiff in the Vatican sends off another papal encyclical condemning condoms, then staggers off to his jewel-encrusted apartment to drink himself into insensibility on unconsecrated wine from the cellars of the richest city in the world. Where's the humour in that? Nowhere, I warrant. Finally, briefly, ladies and gentlemen, the third body of evidence, the world around us, God's creation. If God has a sense of humour, then the world should be a funny place. But it's not, ladies and gentlemen. It's a confusing and duplicitous place where on our TV screens daily, images of starving Ethiopians are interspersed with images of supermodels mincing down the catwalks. Although just which is getting harder and harder to tell. And it's a cruel world, ladies and gentlemen, where millions of people die of disease, war, famine every year. And yet still, not only does Bert Newton manage to survive, but his face manages to grow larger and larger and larger as he does. This is a world that could only be created by a vengeful and malicious God, so humorless and vindictive that when he was creating the means of propagating the species itself, he created two parts that fit together and whose conjunction is vital for the continuation of Homo sapiens, and then he attached them to two completely different beings, man and women, that can barely stand each other. It would be lovely to think that God has a sense of humour, but he doesn't. He's an angry and malicious God determined to punish us for mythical crimes committed back when the world was created. Ladies and gentlemen, you may have thought with Nietzsche that God was dead, that he was old hat, irrelevant to the 20th century. Let me assure you that like any Arnold Schwarzenegger film you've ever seen, God's back and he's not happy.
And yea, Sir Francis Green slayed the dragon. And the dragon was Rachel Berger, and she slayed him right back. But not immediately. A London critic wrote of her show, "The laughs build up gradually." In Perth, she reportedly had the crowd constantly teetering on the verge of a cackle. Now, look, Rachel, we haven't got time for that sort of craftsman-like carpentry here. This is loaves and fishes stuff. Make a big impact quickly and a little go a long way. At work, she's been described as part urban goddess, part universal soldier, and definitely out of control. At home, she's just an angel. She'd better pray that God has a sense of humour. Heavens above. To continue the case for the negative, Rachel Berger.
Thank you, Samson. You've been seeing Delilah again. Now, someone here is hurting. Francis Greenslade. Like his namesake, the talking mule. Your hairdresser's certainly got a good sense of humour, Francis. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to establish my credibility in contrast to the incredibility of this unholy trinity. The Father, Son, and mouldy host. I am Jewish, and thus I am a direct descendant of Eve. Eve Berger. It's a problem being Jewish, particularly at Easter time. Particularly on Good Friday. People always come up to me and point their finger and say, "Rach, the Jews killed Christ." Like I did it. And I always say, no, my parents were there, but they voted no. My parents did the catering. Let me begin at the beginning. When Adam first said to Eve, "I suppose a baguette is out of the question." Before Robyn begot Francis and Francis begot Andrew and they all got bloody nowhere. God does have a sense of humour. Paul Keating became Prime Minister. Not only does God have a sense of humour, but like all good comedians, is into victimisation. John Hewson was re-elected as leader of the opposition. Never give a sucker an even break, I think. And think about it, God must be up there pissing himself. Our treasurer's name is John Dawkins. I don't think we're in a recession at all. I think there's plenty of money in the Reserve Bank. I think that John Dawkins has just forgotten the PIN number. God is the quintessential prankster, slipping on banana skins, walking to the wind, juggling. Jesus walking on water. Well, in Adelaide, you could do that. Moses parting the seas, great publicity stunt. Got him a full page in the Bible. The Paradise Land deal, I love this one. Not only were Adam and Eve evicted from the Garden of Eden, but they never got their bond back. What props, what tricks, what flaps and traps in God's bag. God's most currently powerful and famous chief executive officer drives around in a refrigerated display cabinet. The Pope-mobile. And for a bit of slapstick, God created Lycra, so we all know what it's like to feel like a bratwurst. Let's examine God's CV further. The biblical books, full of satire, taunt, mockery, and burlesque. The apple boycott. You can eat off every tree, except that one. The serpent's transparent sales pitch to Eve. It's only an apple. Ye shall not surely die, but be as gods, knowing good and evil. Sounds like the John Singleton of the Bible. And poor Adam set up to be the victim. She made me do it, she made me do it, she made me do it! He could have said no. Eve came from Adam's ribcage, and the cage still haunts her. God, with infinite jest, created man in his own image. What a gagster. Man, the perfect creature, with the coordination to light a cigarette while driving the car. The talent to play cricket while growing a moustache. And the ability to fall over while completely pissed and not feel a thing. Brilliant creation. And like Jesus of Nazareth, there are others in God's troupe. Geoffrey of Victoria. Erstwhile premier and wine wholesaler. Unfortunately, the only wines in his cabinet are dry whites. God is a performance artist, and like all performance artists, is often completely obscure and makes no sense at all. I quote from the book of Ecclesiastes. A live dog is better than a dead lion. Obviously. And more. Do not let your tongue lead you into sin. But if you want to, take the third door to the right. And from the Song of Songs, you are beautiful, my dearest. Turn your eyes away from me. They dazzle me. Your hair is like a flock of goats streaming down Mount Gilad. Your teeth are like a flock of ewes coming up fresh from the dipping. God is not only a prankster, but a New Zealander as well. Now, God does go the full leg pulling on this one. Men peak at 18. Women peak at 35. Roughly. Sometimes gently. The joke is, not only do men...
She's peeking.
Woman of my own heart, yes. Not only do men of 18 look like a pizza exploded in their face, but where does that leave a woman like me on a Saturday night? At McDonald's, putting my date in the high chair. Sometimes I think maybe God needs to revamp the script a little. Imagine if there was a New Testament, a new improved testament, the Australian version. Imagine if Moses had been Australian. Would have gone up Mount Sinai with a slab. Come back down when the beer ran out. One commandment, bugger it. Does God have a sense of humour? Of course she does. Behold her most potent contract with man, circumcision. What was she thinking on that day? Was she just sitting at her desk sharpening a pencil? Oh, if I take the top off, it writes. One final proverb from the book of Ecclesiastes. Whoso loveth wisdom is righteous, but he that keepeth company with Denton is lost. Thank you. Thank you.
Wasn't it Dame Edna Everage who said, whoever performs an act of circumcision doesn't go far enough? And a certain scribe called H.L. Mencken spoke, saying, a church is a place in which gentlemen who have never been to heaven brag about it to people who will never get there. Our third speaker for the affirmative won't get there either, but won't he at least have a laugh along the way? God help us, it's living proof that God has no sense of humour. Andrew Denton.
Hello. Comfy? Good. Mein Führer, I can... Oops, sorry, wrong movie. Much as I would like to believe that God does have a sense of humour, I'm afraid close examination shows that this cannot be so. You see, God is all-seeing and all-knowing. He knows the past, the present and the future. He knows our words and our deeds. Logically, therefore, he also knows the punchline to every joke even before it's devised. Wendy and Rachel imagine doing a gig for God. Lord, did you hear the one about yes, I've heard it? And then I said, all right, even if he could have a sense of humour, why? Why would he need one? To laugh at his own imperfections? I don't think so. To laugh at others' imperfections, the traditional use for humour? Well, sadly not. You see, God is pretty specific on this, and his range of responses to our imperfections pretty well recorded. God is not notorious for his light touch when we stray from the path, which is unfortunate. Life would be just that little easier to bear if when we did transgress, we knew that once in a while the Lord would look upon us, smile ruefully, make a playful fist and say, why, I oughta... But no, sadly, it's lakes of molten brimstone for us. Now, to be eternally good, God keeps an enormous staff of angels, seraphim, cherubim, etc., and it is important that he sets them the right example. Imagine if God, just for a laugh, just for the hell of it, and I use that expression advisedly, were to say, I don't know, make horns grow on the Pope's head while he's delivering the Mass at St. Peter's. Be a great gag. You'd have Christians and pilgrims in their thousands running in a blind panic from the square while the Pope's there blessing away, wondering what the hell is going on. Strange, this act normally goes down a storm. Now, that would be very easy for God to do, but what sort of an example is that to set to his angels? Within days, we'd have Fred Nile appearing in drag on Late Line professing his love for J. Edgar Hoover. Not very likely, more's the pity. No, I'm afraid, despite all this unassailable logic, even if you hope against hope that God does have a sense of humour, you have to ask yourself, where is the evidence? I mean, these people here can conjecture all they like. You know, they can raise whoopee cushions and Jeff Kennett. They can conjecture all they like about the state of the universe and cite it as an obvious example of God's sense of humour. It's very easy. I'll show you how. I can walk over to Richard Neville right now and say, oh, gee, any God that would still allow a hippie to be alive in the 90s must have a sense of humour. It's that simple, and that essentially is their entire argument. But it is, as Francis has said, the only real evidence we have as to what God is like is in the Bible. Now, I should point out at this time that we are concentrating largely on the Bible because it is best known to Australians. However, for those of other persuasions watching, there is a simulcast of our side of the debate on SBS in 17 different denominations right now, including Rastafarian, of course. Now, only in the Bible do we hear in God's own words what sort of a guy he is. Now, if you were trying to match God up for a computer date using the Bible, this is the sort of profile you'd have. God, age indeterminate, been there, done that sort of a guy, loves to love, extremely bright, has one son, talks about him incessantly, moves rather strangely, believes in ghosts, possible split personality, a perfectionist who tends to lay down the law, prone to extreme wrath, likes to smote, seeking a permanent relationship with as many people as possible. So many attractive features, but no sense of humour. Indeed, you can go right through the Holy Bible, or indeed any well-known religious work. The Quran, ask Mr. S. Rushdie of No Fixed Address. The Bhagavad Gita, the Talmud, the well-known Indian works of religion, The Joy of Sikhs, or the lesser-known Ship's Book of Jains. You can go through any of these. Indeed, you can go through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation and not find one single reference to God's sense of humour. This quality, the other team would have you believe, the Lord possesses in spades. Now, isn't this a bit peculiar? I think it's a bit peculiar. For instance, how does the Lord react to mischief and misbehaviour? Does he laugh it off? Well, no, he doesn't. He gets a bit tetchy, actually. How else? How else would you describe a God who condemns all of mankind because someone took a bite of his apple? And it's not just the big things that God gets annoyed about. Bible fans will be familiar with Numbers 15:32, the story of the poor Israelite found gathering wood on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and the whole assembly, and they kept him in custody because it was not clear what should be done to him. And then the Lord said, no doubt lightheartedly, to Moses, the man must die. The whole assembly must stone him outside the camp. So the assembly took him outside the camp and stoned him to death. Now, I'm not saying that this is wrong. In fact, it is entirely appropriate behaviour because being God is an utterly, utterly serious business. And when Armageddon and the riders of the apocalypse are amongst us, it will come as no surprise to learn, as Revelation tells us, that there will be 4 riders: war, famine, death, and Jesus himself, and not a 5th, flatulence. And speaking of Jesus, why is it, do you think, that in the entire 33 years he was on Earth, there is not one recorded incidence of him letting his hair down? As Francis pointed out before, he had ample opportunity. Perhaps we've yet to discover that missing Dead Sea Scroll, which tells of the day that Jesus and the apostles hit the mead by the shores of Lake Galilee. And in high spirits, Jesus turned a blind man into a leper, then gave him back his sight. Or perhaps just raised a suicide from the dead and said, hey, this is your lucky day. No, Robyn is right. Humour is not God's style. I mean, can you imagine God doing a knock-knock joke? Knock, knock. Who's there? God. God who? You're a dead man. Mel Brooks once described comedy thus: tragedy is when I cut my finger. Comedy is when you walk into an open sewer and die. Now, really, does that sound like the philosophy of God? Any God to you? It doesn't, does it? And perhaps that's just as well, because when you think about it, do we really want a God with a sense of humour? I know I don't. The last thing I want, should I make it to the pearly gates, is for St. Peter to say to me, well, Andrew, you've lived a good life, a Christian life, by the 10 Commandments, you've done the right thing by your fellow man and lived God's word. Sucker! No, I'm afraid the truth is that God cannot have, must not have, and most certainly does not have a sense of humour, and for that, we should all be eternally grateful.
And to hell with him. Well, we've conclusively proved that God has no sense of humour. Now let's conclusively disprove it. Richard Neville has been disproving things all his life. He looks 52, he's actually 30. 30 years ago, when he looked 12 but was actually 17 3/4, He conclusively proved that you can publish a satirical magazine, to wit, Oz, and not corrupt public morals. Then he disproved that by winning his appeal against deportation. Then he disproved that by deporting himself. Now he's disproved that by disporting himself in public, in newspapers, on TV, and in books. His latest is called Playing Around, which verily is the story of his life. Though he's always playing with a purpose. Ah, but is it a divine purpose? And does God have a sense of humour about this eternally youthful, long-haired git of a grandfather anyway? To conclude the case for the affirmative, Richard Neville.
It's great to be called a long-haired git again. It makes me feel like the 60s are back. And Andrew, thanks very much again for that monumentally sort of sober picture of God. Every time you open your mouth, you subtract from the sum total of human knowledge. And what? I'm here to deny the motion and to pluralize it, because God's first act after creating the earth and utter the first words, which actually weren't "let there be light," that was a mistranslation. It was "let's lighten up." His first act was to be mirthful and to follow his own advice. Be fruitful and multiply. Now, surely this is the first sign of a true comedian. The act of projecting 1,000 faces, of dissembling, of deceiving, of adopting strange names. And let's look at some of God's stage names. Are they somber, sober, dreary gods, these gods of other cultures? From Ethiopia, we have Whack, okay? He's black, he's proud, and he's wacky. From South America, we have Chak, a rain god, a Mayan rain god. And translated, Chak means he who urinates. From the Celts, Robyn Williams' ancestors, we have the god Lug. Okay, now Lug sounds heavy, I know, but he played a mean harp, was great at board games. And his best friend, also a god, was Dag. No relation to Fred. And their boss god was Angus Og, right? They're all true. Now, could you imagine the prayer, the Celtic prayers? He must have said this as a child. You'd sit down, "Hallowed be thy name, Angus Og." Lug, Og, and Dag. The three stooges of the afterlife. And from Sumeria, we have Enki. Now, Enki was really helpful to the king. He would help the king of Sumeria pick the cabinet ministers. But his great trick was to find people and to put them in the place where they had the least aptitude. Now, the spirit of Enki lives on in Canberra today. But I guess the most fun-loving god of all, which you all would have heard of, is Dionysius, who was worshipped as the god of the intoxicating power of nature. Dionysius was the first god of drugs and sex and rock and roll. And his women followers, the Bacchae, used to race on to the top of the mountain where they'd stay all night, they'd take ecstasy, they'd drink, they'd dance, and they'd tear wild animals apart with their bare hands. And then they'd start on the men. Okay? This was the 60s, BC. Yeah. From the moment God invented the biggest stage in the world, and strutted upon it, all he wanted was, wild parties, easy laughs, and funny names. But, the other team says, no, he's a real old sourpuss. All those vaudeville days are gone now. It's all gone wrong. It's pestilence, it's famines, it's nuclear threats, it's disease, it's plagues, it's McDonald's storming the kindergartens of our children. Okay, it's dark. I agree, it's grim. But I don't want you to despair. Don't throw God out with the bathwater. What's the fun of atheism? You'd have to spend the rest of your life listening to the science show. And then when you did die, you'd have nowhere to go. So I'm going to run through a few theologically sound summaries of the world's major religions. So you can see what sort of incredible choice you've got. Catholicism. If stuff happens, say the Catholics, we deserve it. But the Protestants say, hey, if only we worked harder, stuff would happen to someone else. Islam says, if stuff happens, it's the will of Allah. Maybe it's the will of Israel. Judaism. Why is stuff always happening to us? Hinduism. This stuff happens every lifetime. Buddhism. If stuff happens, hey, it's not really stuff. What do the atheists say, huh? Get stuffed. But anyway, for those of you who want to forget bad-tempered, old-time warring religion, well, God invented a new one. The New Age. Okay, the new kid on the block. And with the New Age, of course, it's we create our own stuff. Now, most of us have just sat around creating a mountain of garbage and inventing what? You know, shampoo for chemically damaged hair, right? But the Tibetans, they sat on top of a mountain, shaved off their hair, and invented meditation, humour, and otherworld serious debating. So the Tibetans, they spent their time raising their consciousness, while we spend our time raising the lead levels in our children's blood. And so in Australia, we're completely obsessed with building roads that wreck the bush just so we can reach surface paradise. Well, the Tibetans, they've invented 1,000 ways to reach paradise without the surfers. And they created the most religious civilization on Earth until the most godless and humorless government on Earth, the Chinese, invaded Tibet. And they destroyed 6,000 ancient monasteries. They murdered and raped the nuns and the monks. And they killed 1.2 million Tibetans. I mean, I guess if Peking does get the Olympics, well, the gold medal event will be ethnic cleansing. But the lamas are still laughing, and none more so than the Dalai Lama. Why? Because the worse the world becomes, the closer you get to God. And the closer you get to God, the funnier life seems. I mean, for 4 years, Brian Keenan, an Irishman, was locked in a box in Beirut, the victim of Middle East madness. He was here in Australia recently, and he was asked by the ABC radio, what did he learn from his experience? And he said, I learned that laughter was God, that this came to me as a mysterious revelation, that there is no difference. And this was a man who was not in a position to have a lot of laughs, but there it came to him. Laughter and God was the same thing. So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to views about God, who are we going to believe? Brian Keenan, a man who has spent 4 years in a box? Or Andrew Denton, who has merely spent 4 years on the box? Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only stand-up comedian in this world and out of this world who never sits down is God. Thank you.
According to Peter de Vries, it is the final proof of God's existence that he need not exist in order to save us. Work that out, and you'll have no need of a summing up. But God said that the last word, now as always, was with Andrew Denton and then Wendy Harmer.
We are all going to burn in hell, but they're going to burn a lot hotter. Wendy Harmer told us some Hindi bedtime stories and then hoped God wouldn't strike her dead. No, Wendy, not yet. He can wait. He can wait. Wendy confidently told us that God, the unknowable, must have a sense of humour. If he's unknowable, Wendy, how do you know? You probably don't know, Wendy, because you've got the sort of mind that can look at all of God's wonders and of all of them merely cite to us the fart, crimpline, Billy Ray Cyrus and clear cola. It says a lot more about you than about this debate, Wendy Harmer. As did your revelations about the orgasm in that millimetre. Wendy, let me tell you something. We call out, "Oh God," when we orgasm, not because we're thanking him for a hilarious time, but because we think we're about to die. We're calling out, "Oh God, I'm sorry, I'm going to die, please. Please, treat me well." And finally, Wendy made the extraordinary claim that God is a great stand-up. Oh, really? Oh, really? When God came to earth as Jesus and did a gig, Wendy, he died completely. 3 days is an eternal death in comedy, Wendy, as you well know. What audience is going to hang around to hear the next joke? Rachel, yes, the Jewish kamikaze pilot screaming Torah, 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 as she bravely committed suicide on the logic of her own argument. Rachel, let me give you some biblical scholarship. If you know your Bible, you'll know that in Proverbs there are listed 12 abominations to God. I'm going to cite 4 to you. Abominations to God: the thoughts of the wicked, a heart that devises wicked imaginations, feet that are swift in running to mischief, one who sows discord among brethren. Now, Rachel, as you know, to a comedian, these are a job description. But to God, they are not just an annoyance, no, they are an abomination. And finally, Rachel had the temerity to call God a New Zealander. Rachel, Rachel, Rachel. If that was so, Trevor Chappell would have been turned to a pillar of salt the moment he tried to bowl underarm. Richard Neville. Woodstock is not a dream, not an image on a TV screen. Oh, it's good to have you back, Richard. We've missed that time. As the smell of incense wafted subtly across the hall. Richard said that every time I speak, I subtract from the sum total of human knowledge. This may be so, Richard, but only so you can understand what it is that I'm saying. Funny names. I can do funny names. Let me give you some from the Bible. Habakkuk. Nebuchadnezzar. Haggai. Richard, this debate may one day be shown overseas, and possibly the people of Norway will be saying to themselves, "Did you know they got a guy in Australia called Richard Neville?" All the evidence brought before you by these people has been purely circumstantial, conjecture. The only real evidence, the only true logic put before you today has been by us. The evidence of God's own words and deeds. Evidence which paints a compelling picture of a God with many fine qualities, but absolutely no sense of humour. Now, you keep citing the fact that we are funny as an example of God's sense of humour. We have evolved a sense of humour in response to his complete lack of one. Richard asked, who are we going to believe? Me, who's been on the box for 4 years, or a man who's been in a box for 4 years? I put it to you differently. Who are you going to believe? A man who's been in a box for 4 years, or your own hearts, people who are going to be in a box for eternity? You know the truth. Humour is mischief, and mischief is Satan. And that is why God has no sense of humour.
Ladies and gentlemen, let us pray. Let us pray to Andrew's team's God, God, the misery guts. God, the serial killer. God, the God who tells really bad jokes like putting pickled onions in people's pockets, which is really pathetic and we've all heard it before. God, the drive-by murderer. Well, let's, ladies and gentlemen, pray to our God. God, the person who gives a person a waistcoat from the ABC Play School wardrobe department and thinks they look great in it. A God who talks to people like Robyn Williams and he doesn't know yet that he's schizophrenic. A God that, while the whole time Francis Greenslade is talking, you're going to hope he drops his bits of paper. The God that makes George Bush throw up on the Japanese Prime Minister. Listen, if you guys are having such a hard time with your God, get yourself a new one. If you ascribe so much responsibility to this God, get yourself a laughing Buddha. Get yourself a Shinto God. Get yourself a Taoist God, a Lao Tse. Get yourself a God who's a bloody joke. The title of the greatest treatise on the human condition was penned by Dante. It is called, ladies and gentlemen, the Divine Comedy. It's not called the Divine Film Noir. It's not called the Divine Disaster Movie. It's not called the Divine Documentary. We have been given the ability to laugh, ladies and gentlemen. We've been given the ability to laugh and the ability to fight. Because we spend more time doing one more than the other, is that God's fault or is that man's fault? I'm reminded of another old Eastern story, which I'm going to leave you with. Well, in the beginning, the gods created, so this old story goes, the gods created man and earth, and then they created laughter and happiness. And the gods knew that this was such a special gift, they didn't want to give it to man. So they thought they would hide it. And one god said, let's hide happiness in the mountains. The other god said, no. Well, the other god said, let's hide it under the sea. And finally, the gods decided to hide it in the heart of men because they knew we would never think of looking there. Good one, God. Thank you.
And lo, in the New York Times there appeared a limerick saying, God's plan made a hopeful beginning, but man spoiled his chances by sinning. We trust that the story will end in God's glory, but at present, the other side's winning. Are your Sunday best voices ready for a hymn of praise? Those in favour of the motion that God has no sense of humour will sing Hallelujah a couple of times, if you would. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hallelujah! Hallelujah! Daryl Summers, eat your heart out. And those against the motion, saying that God has a sense of humour, to the tune of The Life of Brian, sing Always Look on the Right Side of a Laugh. Come on, brothers and sisters. 1, 2, 3. Always look on the right side of a laugh.
And we shall burn in hell!
By the barest of discernible margins, God tells me the motion is won. So this really is as funny as it gets. Hell's bells. But no matter, chin up, eyes closed, hands together, let us spray. And the writing was sprayed on a wall in Los Angeles, and the writing said, God is dead. But don't worry, the Virgin Mary is pregnant again. God may have a sense of humour or not. If you don't believe, it's a lot of rot. If you do, ask the Lord to come back again. We're dying to hear the punchline. Amen. Well done.
Two of the previous World Series debates, Is Laughter Better Than Sex and That Australia Needs the Royal Family, are available on audio tape from all ABC shops and centres. Stay with us now for the new series of Attitude.